Hello, everyone, and welcome to the EX Conversation. In this episode, I sit down with Michelle Martinez, who works in technology enablement and delivery at VideoJet Technologies. And I get to dive into what makes a human-centered culture in our IT team and how we can take some learnings from IT and apply them into human-centered workplaces. So let's get into it. Hi, Michelle, and welcome to the EX Conversation.
Hey, Kyle. Thanks for having me.
I'm excited to have you on. You're actually the first kind of IT type stakeholder that I've had on the EX Conversation. So I'm really glad that you could join. I know you're not a typical IT stakeholder as well, which is why I was so excited to have you on. Would you mind telling me a little bit about your work background and your career history, your kind of origin story?
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So I spent the last 15 years at the intersection of technology and people. And the bottom line is what I've learned is the technology is not the hard part. It's
Hmm.
rarely the hard part. So I started off as an engineer and I ended up in math. And I built my career moving through progressively larger organizations. So I started with a software company that sold software to small to mid-sized financial institutions.
Hmm.
Then I moved on to a larger nonprofit. And now I'm with a global manufacturing company that has 14 subsidiaries and like a parent structure. And so I manage a software development team for that industry. But it's really been so many different industries, so many different scales, so many different types of company setups. But the same problem keeps showing up, which is the technology is fine. It's like the humans inside the technology, like
Hmm.
inside the systems that are really the struggling part. People are struggling to talk to each other. And that's really what I keep getting pushed toward. Like I'm always in an IT software role, but really it's always talking about the human piece and connecting people.
So tell me, you've got like a proper techie background. So I sometimes call myself a techie, but I'm probably like a fake techie. I like looking at the Apple releases. I work with engineers and stuff, but I'm not an engineer myself. And so you've got that kind of almost like training in like a mathematical engineering mindset. How has that kind of uh, changed the approach that you have when it comes to some of these big people problems as well? Because it's not your typical background for that sort of
Yeah.
role.
Yeah. And yeah, so you're right. For with engineering and like the more of a process background, usually you end up starting with a tool or with a solution is usually how a lot of these projects and companies think or when my team gets pulled in, it's usually like we have a solution, we have a tool. And so that's where I've started with, okay, we start with the process and the tool. But
Hmm.
when I kept digging into this, I'm like, okay, why do some projects fail even if they have better technology? Or why do some teams do better or worse when the technology or the system is different? And that's what led me into more research into there's a company that's done the research for us. They've looked
Hmm.
at all of the technology teams and they found out that and the company is called Dora, Dora,
Love
and
that.
they have the data to prove that it actually doesn't matter what your tool is, what your platform is, what your technology is. The number one indicator of success is actually psychological safety and trust on teams.
Hmm.
And so you can go into engineering and you can go into this field very much focused on these are the skills I have, this is what I can accomplish, these are the tools, and you need that. But that's only about half of the equation, and you need the other part, which is you need teams that can work well together, that can fail fast, that can
Hmm.
innovate and not be afraid to fail completely and have to start over in the next week. So
Hmm.
that's really what I found is when I came down to which teams are doing well and which teams are struggling, it's always that human, that psychological safety, that trust factor. And so that just felt like the obvious thing to spend time and attention on,
Hmm.
where, that's really the predictor of success.
So, not to make any assumptions, but typically in kind of more technical IT functions, when you start talking about some of the softer people stuff, psychological safety, trust, these are things that maybe the team or the leadership don't always understand. Um, how have you kind of socialized that to get a bit of support for that?
Y Yeah, and that's my favorite thing to do is the messy middle is where you have the strategy and the technology and the smarts, and now you need to actually execute. And
Mhm.
so there is in software, and this is what I think actually my secret opinion is, this will actually change the
Ooh.
world, not just change software. But in software, there's an operating principle called DevOps, or development operations.
Mhm.
And it's all about the people building the technology and the people using the technology actually working together. But it's also the best engineering tool for teams, high performing teams. So it's a really easy sell to tell my engineers, hey, this is what Google, Amazon, Microsoft are using, this DevOps process. And it's usually 4 stages. It's investigate the problem, design the solution, build the solution, and then deploy it. And so
Mhm.
that 4 kind of piece operating rhythm is how all high engineering teams perform, how they actually deliver quickly. It's how bugs stay out of production, and it's how you can iterate really fast with new technology. And so if you that's kind of the container of this is engineers know DevOps, they know that process,
Mhm.
but what you have to layer on then is what we call these soft skills, or the first part of the process where you're investigating, that's actually where you're aligning. That's where you're creating trust and psychological safety. So it is an investigation, it is a proper step of software development and engineering, but it's also where you're aligning and getting on the same page with your stakeholders and your business partners. So that's the
Mhm.
first. And then when you actually go to design the product, this is where your reality becomes their reality. So you
Mhm.
as an engineer, you can have these great schematics, these great prep tools. You can kind of show your demos, and that is where you're actually showing what your truth, and you're hearing the stakeholders share their truth of, no, I don't really like that, or I kind of want to tweak that, or, it's where your realities become the same. And
Mhm.
then when you develop, and that's what we really think about with engineering is we spend a lot of time on how do we actually do the thing, how do we write the code. Well, now we can vibe code. Now we
Yeah.
can actually, our business stakeholders who have no background in engineering can actually be very transparent, helping us build the tools. So even that development process that used to be very much a hardcore coder, you have to have all this background, that's going away now. So now you layer in that piece of the engineering process, and that's where you have to now not always be right, and be okay not being right, or be okay not being the expert. And so that's where you layer in those skills in that part of the process. And then the deployment, that's the operating rhythm. That's when you've decided, your engineers and your business have decided, this is when we're going to deploy, this is how we're going to train. And so through each step of that process, why it's a very complex engineering process, each step requires you to partner in a way that creates that safety and that trust. So at the end of the day, you're building what everyone wants, and you can pivot as you need to.
So a lot of people don't know this about me, but I actually I started my career working in an IT function. And in those days, there were very specific lines between what IT did and what the business did. But what you're kind of describing, and especially kind of the era within with AI and vibe coding and things like that, there seems to be a bit of like a blurring of those lines between what the business does and the IT team does. Um, is that your experience? And do you think it's a good thing or a bad thing?
Oh, yeah, yes, and that's the future. So even if it's a good or a bad thing, it's just the way of the future, because like you said, those lines are blurring, and what you needed a very siloed, very strict IT team for, like what you said, you could have people come in, and we have good ideas coming in now because there's so many different AI solutions. It's still very much in its infancy, and there's so much new stuff out there. We just can't keep up with it.
Mhm.
So that's where that mindset of being a good engineer and going through the regular software development process always has to be with that DevOps mindset of, you're always thinking of the user of the technology and the builder of the technology working together in every step.
Mhm.
Because and this is my hot take is, I think in the future everyone is going to be a software developer manager at some level. I think every company will be some like sort of AI, some agent, some data, and then on top
Mhm.
of that will just be teams that are being managed by people who need to understand the AI tools. So it's all blurring. Like I think the future is definitely way more people working more like software teams, but also
Mhm.
software teams working way more like business teams. And it's just going to keep getting blurrier. And
Mhm.
and again, this is why DevOps is such a crucial piece of engineering mindset, but also business partnership.
And so, I guess the first way we got into contact was over employee experience. I know you were really interested on this kind of like intersection between kind of IT and HR and communication, and that's something that you've kind of started to create within some of the work that you do. Um, but like, how do you think that kind of Oh, actually, I've got an interesting question. So, how do you think that IT teams and developers and software engineers can start to be more informed or aware of what's happening in employee experience and delivering for employee experience, digital employee experience?
So I actually believe it's not any different than anyone else. So,
Hmm.
and I think the bottom line would be we need to all act like humans in our systems.
Hmm.
So the more you can remember your humanity and the more you can kind of be like a true human working in a system, that will be the change we need. So what I mean by that is because when I look at teams, my engineering teams, but when I look at my business teams, they're all kind of struggling with the same thing of being too much collaboration, too many projects. The cross-functional
Hmm.
projects are getting more complex in scale.
Yeah.
They're being asked for more things, and now that everyone can talk to each other, now you've got people, like, in finance and people in product all talking together and all wanting, like, very similar tools, and so it actually is to me, the answer is acting more human, and what I mean by that is, for example, when I got hired for the job I'm in now, my manager, I flew in from out of state, and my manager couldn't meet me when I landed because he had to go do some things with his kids, drop off kids in the morning. So we had someone else pick me up. And so
Yeah.
it's that whole thing of like, yeah, I am a human, I'm a parent, I have children, or I have this responsibility, or I have these things I want to do. And
Hmm.
designing your systems and your regular operating methods to work with that and through that.
Yeah.
So it's being transparent about I've got 20 different people in my company who can ask me for anything at any time. And
Uh-huh.
how do I, as an engineer, respond to that? And that's building, again, those processes, that DevOps process of we're going to investigate, we're going to design, build, and deploy, and we're not going to skip those steps. And
Hmm.
we're gonna understand why we're doing them and what they help each other for. And then we're gonna be human in that system. So,
Uh-huh.
so like an example like that is if you work asynchronously with teams remotely, then that allows people to check in on meetings when they need to, or allows
Hmm.
them to do work they need to when they can do it. And then everyone kind of knows what they need to do next. So no one's waiting on someone else, but also people can work when they need to.
Hmm.
So I think it is truly just allowing people to be human and making sure those processes you have are aligned in a way where people can show up
Uh-huh.
as humans.
So, um, you've kind of so I love that really human element to it, and I think it's something that, especially when you're working in more technical roles, you can kind of lose sight of that because you might spend most of your day looking at code or talking about processes, and so you can kind of lose that human element. Um,
Mhm.
so you have been in a unique position where you've been kind of exposed to a lot more of that human side, more of that people side in your organization, and you created some of that for yourself, which is what I really love. Um, what's something within kind of employee experience that you've either learned or that you're quite like passionate about, or you feel is maybe a real opportunity for us in the industry that we can make real advances with? What's something that you're kind of like passionate about in employee experience that you think
Uh,
we could
yeah,
talk
what
more
I'm
about?
really passionate. Yeah, thank you. I love that question. I'm really passionate about building great teams, and that
Hmm.
goes from how you hire and how you hire, how you onboard, and then how people feel working on your team. And
Hmm.
so, and like you said, you've worked in the past with IT partners, and I know part of the hiring process is working with talent acquisition and HR and filling roles. But what I have found, especially in technical roles, is the things like certificates or different accolades can look really great on a resume. But when it comes to actually what you need for your team, you need someone who actually has done the work and has some experience. And to me, the certifications and the awards don't mean that much to me. I actually just kind of look past them on resumes. And so I think one thing I would say with employee experience is I think you have to partner a little bit more closely with your TA and your HR team so they because the technical people can and technical resumes can look like really big and really meaty on paper.
Mhm.
But when you look, kind of look past all of that, that is where you want to make sure you hire the right people. And so what I say is spending time on hiring the right person. And sometimes that means what that's meant for me is I look at every single resume that comes in. So the TA and HR partners help narrow it down, but I still go in and look at every single one because you are the best person to know to kind of know what you
Mhm.
need and what you're looking for. And technical skills and technical backgrounds, sometimes you need that experience to know, like, oh, even though it was customer service or maybe this other job in this industry doesn't seem relevant, you kind of know those skills that cross over to troubleshooting and problem solving. So I think spending the time to hire the right person is always worth it. It is always worth
Mhm.
taking more time, going slower, going back and reviewing the resume because the people who end up on your team determine the culture and behavior and the norms. And it's
Mhm.
really difficult to replace someone. And this is another piece I've seen that when you have low performing people and you don't have the support in place to coach or to mentor, that can really drag a whole team down. And the time you spend up front is always worth it to make sure
Mhm.
you get that good fit and that you have someone to buy in. So I think that's a little bit maybe different than the norm where certificates and accolades are really something people look at, but they honestly don't mean that much to me. And the conversation and the experience is really what should take the lead.
That's so interesting because I feel like we're in a era where like the pace of change is super fast, and so there's this kind of movement to do everything super quickly, make decisions quickly, um, hire quickly, and I've actually had this debate with one of my colleagues as well, where you kind of have that thing where you're looking at like two candidates and you're like, oh, like is this the right one? Do we wait longer or should we just make a decision? We might never get the right one, but you're of the opinion wait, make sure you make the right decision because like it compounds over time and like it can make a big difference either way.
Yeah, yeah, your people are the people who are gonna lead your process and your team forward. They're going to be the people, that you're gonna help grow and mentor, and it's just yeah, it's just the thing I think out of everything we do that you should take the most time on and be the most considerate about.
Hmm.
Because when you do get that right hire, then not only is it a great thing, but it exponentially helps the team. Because then if you hire someone who's a good fit and then I call them a force multiplier, there's someone who's not only good at what they do, but they can help other people,
Hmm.
then you've built like an organization that just competes and can outcompete others. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, it really is a critical piece and one that I think as a people leader and as a manager, you do have to sometimes take the heat from people who want you to move faster or,
Hmm.
we need to fill this, we need to fill this. That's one of those things where I think it should be something you do for yourself and take your time and don't let anyone rush you.
I love that. That's cool. Okay, so I'm going to go into a section where we go over some of the regular questions, the hot takes, the quick fire rounds that I'm keen to ask you about. One of those questions is about hidden skills. I know you spoke a little bit about being human as well, but what's a skill that you think is maybe underrated or underrepresented in the profession?
I would say listening without an agenda.
Hmm.
So, not just listening to respond, not listening to even understand, but listening so the other person feels safe and safe enough to actually tell you what they need. And this is something I learned in it's called Crucial Conversations. It's a communication and leadership class I also teach. And the thing that builds trust is actually not two people talking. It's
Hmm.
actually when the other person feels you and hears you listening. That is
Uh-huh.
where the trust is built. It's why we can talk to some people and leave feeling empty and kind of worse, and why
Uh-huh.
we can talk to other people. It's because the way they're listening is without an agenda and to like, truly actually see what the need is and hear what they're saying. And that's very
Cool.
undervalued because especially in IT, because we're
Yeah.
taught we need to have the answer, we need to have the solution, we need to be the smartest person in the room. But actually the most hidden undervalued skill is that listening.
Oh, I've got a off-script question for you because a lot of the people that listen to this podcast are communication leaders, and often they struggle when it comes to working with some of the more technical teams or technical leaders um, in trying to kind of bring out the points that they want to make that connection and stuff. If I'm a
Mhm.
communication leader listening, what advice would you have to me to strengthen that relationship with the technical teams and the IT functions and things like that?
Yeah, yeah, I think that I would say my advice would be is listen, but you probably will have to ask a few more questions. So
Mhm,
a lot of the IT and background is a lot like support ticket response. Ask a
mhm,
question, answer. And so that might be what a lot of leaders are used to. So you might have to just ask a few questions in a row and maybe even ask the same question over. Like, no, tell me really what is a challenge. Tell me really what you're worried about here. Tell me really what's going to burn your team out, and then listen, and then ask for it when you don't understand, like, "Wait, what is that word? What does agile mean? What does
uh-huh,
story points mean? What is" asking those questions to learn and to listen. So you might have to give yourself a little more time if you're starting to build that relationship for the first time, because I think that will be it. You'll just have to set up a new norm for how you communicate.
mhm. Yeah, that's great. And also, I think that one of the when you look at the kind of audiences in the organization, of course, technical teams are super busy at the moment. It feels like when it comes to like software and engineering, there's a lot happening. Um, and there's also like so much to learn. And it can kind of feel like overwhelming. How do you have any opinions on how organizations can maybe set these teams up more for success so that they're still learning, progressing, but they still feel good and that it doesn't like overwhelm in amongst everything else?
Yes. So there's two things I would say to that. One is you need to understand your capacity. So you need
Hmm.
to and then that capacity, and especially in software, truly is a math equation. So you don't have to put in this person's not trying hard enough, they're lazy, they're new. It's
Uh-huh.
truly a math equation of this is our bucket of capacity. These are how many people or resources we have. And so being able, so that would be the first piece I'd say. If you're in an IT team, make sure you got your capacity down to a math equation so it's very
Uh-huh.
clear on what you can do and what puts you over the edge. And then once you kind of can understand your team's capacity and advocate for that, then there's this other piece of what you're saying is just innovation and learning and go figuring out what is this new thing that came out yesterday. What if, you know, and that is actually that's something actually all the way from the 60s. There's a methodology for new innovation is which is just try it. Like let
Hmm.
things organically happen and grow. That's what's happening right now in the industry, and people are like it's chaotic, it's changing every day, and this is just something we've known about in IT and software forever. Whenever there's a new something like this, it's just crazy, and but
Yeah.
it's a known quantity of you have to let things be organically grow, kinda like a garden. Just let the
Yeah.
AI kind of like, "What happens here in the finance team in AI? What's happening over here with engineering and AI?" And you'll get, like, 5 different things that maybe overlap, but that's how
Hmm.
it's supposed to start when it's new like this. So, you have to let it be messy, and I think it's been messy for about a year or 2, and now people are starting
Yeah.
to be like, "Okay, we need some organization," and
Uh-huh.
that is the right time to start organizing, but you kinda have to be okay with the chaos right now.
Hmm.
So if you can understand your capacity, so you know where your limits are, let it be messy for a little bit. We know how to organize. Companies know how to govern. Companies know how to set up policies and procedures. We're going to do that.
Hmm.
It's just right now a little bit of let it be a little chaotic. But go see what the guy over in your manufacturing plant. What's he going to figure out with AI, or the
Yeah.
woman in customer service answering your phones? Like she might figure something out. So you kind of have to let that happen organically right now. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it can be, working for Unily, which has employee experience software, where there's a lot, we're pushing ourselves to kind of move fast and do quicker. And sometimes the gut instinct of people is to be like, hang on, we are a, a mid enterprise organization. Let's put structure into place. Let's work out how this we're going to process this. And I'm kind of the opinion, controversially, like, look what's happening out there. The releases that Anthropic are doing, this, how quick it is, how messy and chaotic it is. And the reality is that sometimes you have to embrace that before you can put into place the right roadblocks. So yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah. which is why the capacity PE would need to know that because you need to know where your limits are, and so
Right.
you don't end up burnt out and you don't end up taking on too much. Yeah.
For sure. What's one piece of advice you wish you'd known at the start of your career?
Oh, yeah. That and it's still advice that I tell myself today is that you don't have to ask for permission to start. You don't need
Hmm.
permission to start. So for a long time, I would see all these problems in organizations and teams, and I kept waiting for someone to give me the green light, or I would build these presentation decks on pointing out like what the problems were and like asking someone for permission to go fix this or asking did anyone else see these issues. And I realized like I actually no 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 I can just start fixing the problem, or I can start building what I know is right. Sometimes the permission catches up, sometimes it doesn't, but you
Uh-huh.
always learn something. And I think it's more important to feel like you're in the right place than to ask for permission.
Yeah, you are preaching to the choir there. If there's anything I do, it's like ask for forgiveness rather than permission because I feel like I move quite fast. I've got loads of ideas and I'm just like get quite excited and passionate quickly. So I'm like, let's go and do it. So yeah, I agree. And also, I feel like there are if you find something and you've got the knowledge to do it, then like why not? I think there's like this
Yes,
kind of era of a lot of enterprise organizations had these kind of complex matrixed management structures, and the kind of school of thought at the moment seems to be more like flatter and more empowered, moving faster and more collaborative. And I think that's obviously these things go in waves, but I'm liking this kind of like flatter, more empowered wave.
exactly. And because when it's flatter, people are closer to the work. And so they need to be enabled to just go do the work or go try the new thing. And I
Hmm.
agree with you. This age of AI is it's forcing it. You really it doesn't matter if we want it or not. It's so accessible, it's so prevalent, and it's so easy. It's so easy to, for people to just to get started right away
Right.
that you're really slowing people down, if they need to stop and ask permission and check in. Yeah.
Love that. So, the next question I have is, we have this like concept on the show called, like employee experience room 101. And it's this kind of, magical room where we put things or concepts from the workplace that we don't particularly like. What's something that you would like to put into this room 101? Is it concept or idea from workplace or employee experience that you don't like?
Yes, and it's one about the individual. So
Hmm.
I would like to throw away the idea that the individual is responsible for their own growth and performance, and it's solely up to the individual.
Hmm.
And we have because we have all of these resources on how to manage stress and how to manage your workload and personal development while we ignore the environment in which the person works. So
Hmm.
I would say let's throw away the idea that performance and growth are individual responsibilities. And we need to factor in environments and social networks are actually account for just as much, if not more, of someone else's success. So that means stopping with what still provide the resources. I have this app that lets me through my workplace track health metrics and some social and mental health things, which is really great. But if I'm walking into a workplace where I never get to meet my team in person, there's no offsites, there's no place for people to connect and reinvigorate. If you're just in meetings all day and you never actually have work that refreshes you, then it doesn't
Hmm.
matter how much personal stress or how much mental health apps I have. That environment is just setting you up for failure.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, we need to think about it holistically and not just put it on the individual.
I agree, and I guess that supports your point about kind of thinking about teams and the right hires and the way people work together, and it's not accident; it's by design, right? So, it kind of you strengthened your point from before, which I love.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, yes. Again, I agree that getting the right people in place is important because those become your network, and there's yeah, like there's the social capital imperative is this kind of textbook research that's just come out recently in this space talking about that how um the people that you interact with, your peers, are actually more influential than your manager and your happiness and your well-being and your ability to get your work done.
Right.
So we're all human. It all comes back to human connection. And I just keep saying the technology is the least important part of it. It's the humans and the system.
Excellent. And the last question I have for you is actually from my last guest. And that question is, what's the most memorable thing that a leader has asked you to create or roll out that you didn't believe in? It's quite an
Mm.
interesting one because
Oh
it always
yeah, that's
happens,
someone.
right? In the workplace, like you always have to, sometimes you just have to suck it up and it's idea. And if we've agreed, then you roll with the punches and move on with it. What's something that you kind of like backed and rolled out, but maybe didn't have the most belief in, if you can share
Oh.
that?
And then is it hopeful that like I learned something out of this, or just is this
Yeah,
more like complaining about something I did?
I mean, a complaint is always fine. It always works sometimes. So it
Okay.
doesn't have to be a learning.
Yeah, let's see. Let me think about that. Someone that I didn't want to do. I'm pretty good about not doing what I don't want to do.
Oh, nice. I love that for you. I,
But I will okay, one thing that's coming to mind is, when I worked for the nonprofit organization, their headquarter office, they were replacing all their phone system, and that got put under the ITM bucket, for me and my team to manage, and so I didn't understand. I'm like, "Okay, we're just switching out some phones and, like, getting a new phone, company and setting up a new vendor, like, that'll be easy, like, that'll be nothing, sure." Uh, and I didn't really understand why we were doing it, so that's, I guess, answering your question of, like, I don't like, why is this a big deal? I didn't get it, but fine, I'll do the project. And that actually ended up being the thing that helped me the most. It was the first project I did within 3 months of starting at that company, and literally I had to touch every single person because it was an office where every single person had a phone.
hmm
And so the thing that felt like a one-off, like a nothing project, it ended up being the thing where I got to connect with everyone. And then
That's so
working with
cool.
that vendor, we found some ways that the phone lines were being transferred, or the way it was set up, that was just really outdated and didn't function with how the organization ran. So I was able to just very easily change some like phone prompts. And then the human side of it, okay, I'm glad that we're talking about this. The human side of it was, we could set it up in a way where when we're on holidays or on PTO or a human couldn't answer the phone, that we could still handle the incoming call volume. Because
hmm
calls from a nonprofit, like you don't want to miss any call. You don't know what donor or what's going to be important.
hmm Right.
And so we set up the answering system and the auto replies and the holidays in a way where we didn't need a human. And so all of this work we had done around getting someone on holiday or getting someone after hours, we were able to automate and set up. And so that felt like, oh great, that was a great win now, where no one was
Yeah.
trying to find coverage on these weird hours. So I thought it was a small project. I thought it was a throwaway, and it ended up being the thing that really got me in.
Yeah.
And I thought it again, there wasn't anything technically hard about it. So as an IT technical person, I'm like, why?
Uh-huh.
Like whatever. There's no glory in this,
There
but
was
it
no
ended up
challenge.
being
Yeah.
it ended up being really great for me. Yeah.
Yeah, it was worth it in the end. Great story. And I've
Yeah.
got one final question for you, which is what would be your next question to our next guest?
Oh. When did you last feel genuinely human at work? And what made that
Oh,
possible? Yeah, what made that possible for the last time you felt genuinely human at work?
excellent. I love that. Michelle, thank you so much. If you enjoyed the episode, then remember to click to subscribe because there's much more where that came from. And let us know in the comments which bits you enjoyed and found super insightful. Also, if you would like to be part of the EX conversation and feature on the podcast, then please get in touch.